One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.
Well, number one all along has been Rick George, who's the AD at Colorado. Rick George is a former Illinois football player. He worked here briefly after graduation as an assistant for Mike White when Illinois was going good at that time in football. He's got a fantastic resume. He was involved at the highest levels of running the PGA and the Champions Tour in golf. He was involved in a major administrative role with the Texas Rangers baseball team. He's dealt with major network executives through those dealings. He's dealt with advertisers. He's been a successful fundraiser. He's a football guy. He's from the state of Illinois. So the question is, does he want it at this point in his life? I'm told his family really likes living in Boulder. Can't blame them for that. It's kind of where is Rick? And he's issued a couple of, I thought, weak denials about his level of interest. I'm told that he's still very much involved, and there are some big money people who are in his corner. Shad Khan, who's the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, multi-billionaire, is a big Rick George supporter. So he would be number one, depending on his genuine interest and willingness to take on this big challenge. Craig Tiley is the really interesting one. He was the tennis coach at Illinois. He's from South Africa. He won a national championship at Illinois in tennis, which they said could not be done. He left and took over as the COO of Tennis Australia and is the tournament director of the Australian Open that just concluded. When he was here, he expressed an interest in becoming the athletic director one day. He's a global sports administrator, a really interesting guy, also has some money people behind him here. He would need to convince the people doing the hiring that 10 years in Australia involved in tennis can somehow translate into being able to fix football at Illinois. And then there's a bunch of people with Illinois ties, including Tommy Michael, who's the AD at Eastern Illinois University, former basketball player, Josh Whitman, who's a former football player, and a very, very smart guy, law degree, athletic director at Division III Washington University in St. Louis, and probably a couple of others as well. And then there's outside guys like Sean Frazier, the AD at Northern Illinois University, who had a run as Barry Alvarez's top lieutenant at Wisconsin. And I mentioned Tom Bowen, who the people down that area tell me has been vetted. So we'll see. Is there a surprise candidate? It's possible. They've done a pretty good job of operating in a stealth kind of a way and not letting too much leak out about who they've gone after and who they've maybe uncovered. Those interviews this week, and I think they'll have someone named by next week. I think that's possible. I think he's going to have to be convinced on some of the matters we talked about, on the tenuous nature of the chancellor's position, probably on his own salary, because he's making a lot of money out there, plus incentives, and I think Rick would want a long-term deal, maybe 7 or 8 years is what I've heard people talking about, maybe $1 million a year, and some certainty that he would be given pretty wide latitude to do these hirings and get going on this thing. So I think that's a possibility. Yeah, I think as it stretches out here a little longer, that maybe he could come and say, I was sincere when I said I wasn't interested, but these dang people just kept on me, and my old heartstrings for the university kept tugging, and finally I decided, I want to take this challenge on. He seems like a guy that's not afraid of any challenges, that's for sure. So I think what I continue to hear is that the door is still slightly open, and as long as the door is slightly open, I think there's a chance that some of these people who are close to him can maybe twist his arm and get him to consider it. I don't think so. I haven't seen any stories that suggest that he was in any way, shape, or form involved in any of that. That whole tennis thing is, I think there's a lot of unanswered questions yet about exactly what are we talking about here. And I don't think so, although I think it's a question that would come up during an interview process. You know, the thing about him was he was not going to be available to interview face-to-face with people until his obligations at the Australian Open were over, and lo and behold, we find out that this week they're going to do these face-to-face interviews in Indianapolis, and the Australian Open ended on Sunday, so he would in fact be available to fly over and meet with those people if they chose to do it. And you know, I don't know that this is a big factor, but the new president of the University of Illinois is actually Welsh by birth. A lot of his education in England. He speaks with quite an accent. He would not be at all put off by, and I'm told by people that know him that he would be most amused by Craig Tiley's South African/Australian accent. And those two guys might hit it off fantastically for all I know. I know Craig pretty well from his days when he was here, and he is a very impressive guy. And so if Craig has a chance to get in front of any group one-on-one, he will make an impression. There's no doubt. He would interview well. He would make his case well. If he's truly interested in it, his wife is from Illinois, and I'm told that after 10 years of being in Australia that she has expressed some interest in coming back to the States, and maybe this is a challenge he'd be willing to bite off.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.